welcome to another episode of the Interjections podcast, where we talk about movies from the undiscovered decade. This is films from the 19... God, we're not doing well with it.
No, Jimmy's phasing. Jimmy, you gotta move
out of existence.
Jimmy's phasing
Like,
out.
I can't even flip you off. Look.
We can't keep him online, Captain.
I can't keep her together, Captain.
Like I'm flipping out. Like, I'm sorry.
Do you think it's because of the...
No. It's just the podcast knows that like I'm not really a Trekkie, so it's like get him out, be gone. Like, you Star Wars loser, and like look, like all I am is I'm a
podcaster, not a pixelated.
So Jimmy's having teleportation issues today, but
I was already here. Tristan was the one that teleported in. Look, I just.
Do you think we should change our video?
I just don't exist anymore. Don't worry, it's okay. I'll just be a hand.
He'll be disembodied.
I'm the hand of God.
Oh my God, Jimmy, you're gone.
Of course, we're not even talking about that Star Trek movie where it's like right? There's one
where there's a hand. Oh yes, the very first Star Trek is.
Oh yeah. We're not even talking about that one. So like this is a pointless reference. And like funny thing, not a Trekkie, and I know that.
It might be Final Frontier.
Excuse me, it's Trekker. All right.
Well,
Trekkie is offensive.
How about you go trek up? Okay, go trek yourself.
That was the debate of the night.
And we're already into this. Okay. Sorry, Tristan. What are we talking about?
So we're finally towards the end of our second year of the Undiscovered decade. And we're, as you can tell, talking about one of the most beloved franchises. And, well, we weren't sure about this movie because it was the sixth. And typically when you're this deep into a franchise, it's not going to be as good as the first few. But when it first started, they were... They really hit it out of the park with the trilogy. It wasn't exactly the first one that everyone loved, but the second, third, and fourth really did well. And so by the fifth and the sixth, it was kind of falling apart, and they weren't sure if they even wanted to keep the original cast. But that's why I think we have a hidden gem in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So,
yeah. It's commonly held belief in retrospect that people think that the even-numbered Star Trek sequels were the better ones. So 2, 4, and 6 are beloved.
Yeah.
1, 3, and 5 are kind of derided. I actually like the director's cut of the first one quite a bit, even though it's kind of very Kubrickian, trying to be like 2001. Mm-hmm. It's more of a laser light show than anything else. But I kind of like how ethereal it is. It's very much different from the show. It's more celestial and spiritual than.
Oh, I think I might dig that.
I actually like the third one quite a bit. Has a really good villain in Christopher Lloyd, and actually sets up events that come back for this movie.
Directly related to this film because they involve Klingons
and his son David.
The series.
Yeah.
So basically, they start off with this first film, and the series. All the actors were just on the Comic Con circuit, which wasn't even really established. Star Trek is
I think it was back then. It was just Star Trek conventions. It was conventions or Star Trek. Or even sci-fi conventions.
Star Trek established the convention because there were some people writing letters to Gene Roddenberry saying they wanted to have a way to represent their love for the franchise since it was completely dead. They had the animated series had pretty much killed it off, and all the actors weren't doing anything. So they wanted people to make appearances. And that way they could get money. They weren't getting royalties or anything. They weren't replaying the show or anything. So then this motion picture comes out in 1979 because the cons were doing so well. They knew that these people were popular. So they're like, why don't we try a movie? Because they had almost done a movie after the show and it was never going to work. Right. And so getting to see their beloved characters again really sold it. And then they come out with Wrath of Khan, which is to a lot of people the favorite because it has the infamous villain played by Ricardo Montalban, and it sets up a lot of tropes that would happen throughout the movies. It felt like another level, like they were never going to go back to TV. And around the same time, they reboot the show by having the Next Generation. So simultaneously, they're having the old crew go off on these singular missions, and then the show's continuing on TV. So then they have this trilogy, like you said, with Christopher Lloyd. It pretty much has a through line where they're trying to rescue Spock in the third one. That's hence the search for Spock. And then they have to get home, the voyage home. So it all has this through line, and that's kind of written by Nicholas Meyer, who ends up directing the sixth and writing with a couple other people.
Marv Beck.
After that trilogy, I don't know what the Final Frontier is. It's the only Star Trek film I've never seen, but
It's basically a vanity project for William Shatner, because after having directed the fourth one, and people loved the fourth one. A lot more lighthearted and frothy than the other
it's
one.
my favorite. Did the best at the box office.
Honestly, it's most accessible to non-Star Trek fans because it's them going back to the past. It's a lot of fish out of water humor.
It takes place in '86, which is the year it comes out.
Yeah, so I feel like Shatner kind of got a little jealous of the heat that he was getting off of that. So he was like, well, I want to direct a Star Trek movie.
Yeah, Nimoy
he
had directed Voyage Home. So
yeah,
I think Shatner thought he could do it.
Shatner thought he could do it. It ended up being the lowest grossing of the original crew.
All of them, I think. Oh, true. Maybe Nemesis is the
Nemesis is lower,
but Final Frontier is second.
right? And critically, it didn't do well. It's not a horrible movie. There are parts that actually are pretty good in the movie, but people kind of overlook that for some of the. There's a lot of silly, fatuous humor that stops the movie dead. There's a whole camping trip at the beginning with Bones, Spock, and Kirk that just goes on. It's kind of listless. He doesn't have like an assured hand at directing actors, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
And the story's kind of plods along, but like I said, it's not the worst Star Trek movie, but it definitely kind of pumped the brakes on it. So they're just like, if we do another one, we got to make this like the farewell, like the send off, because like you said, Gene Roddenberry had just passed away, and this one's dedicated to him.
They'd also at first thought, should we go back to their origins and have like a Starfleet Academy movie? And they all balked at that. They're like, we're still good. They're in their 60s. They could still do something.
Sure.
So thought about, well, we're 3 months away from retirement. So why don't we all have like one great send off? And if they want to do future movies, maybe they'll have the Next Generation crew or something.
Matter of fact,
which is what they do.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, as an Easter egg for people who like the Next Generation, Michael Dorn plays an ancestor of Worf, who's their attorney in this, so it kind of bridges the gap between the two generations.
Yeah, there's some good cameos in here. It's funny, I brought up that we were watching this one to my dad, and he's like, what is that, the camping trip one?
Yeah.
See, it's weird because going into this, the only Star Trek movies I'd seen were 2 of the J.J. Abrams ones. I had not seen any of the original ones. I had never watched any of the original series. I used to watch Next Generation when I was a lad. You know, that was every Saturday night, our tradition was we'd watch Star Trek and eat Chinese food. And that was like, so I always associate Star Trek with Chinese food now for that reason.
That's fine.
That's weird.
But
yeah, that's sure.
The
you got Pavloved, so
yeah.
Right, exactly. But so watching that, like, it's weird because Star Trek had always really been on my periphery, more like I saw Galaxy Quest, and that was like my understanding of the Galaxy Quest is a perfect film, and we'll get to that point 8 years from now, but
99.
So you know, it was just, I don't know what I was expecting, but I'm watching and I'm like, I'm seeing Shatner and Spock actually talking to each other as friends, and like, this is actually really fucking good.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea. I mean, I didn't think it was gonna. But you know, to your point, I had heard it being more campy in the earlier ones, and in a lot of the motion pictures were just sort of like all over the place.
Yeah.
But now I actually want to go back and watch the rest of them.
There's a camp sensibility to the original series just because the budget, and there's, you know, the sci-fi effects were so new then that they looked really impressive in 67, but it's
not today.
Not really.
It's kind of got like a post.
I mean,
space kind of feel.
I mean, the special effects kind of got blew out of the water when like Star Wars came out as a movie.
Or 2001. Really.
Or 2000,
which influenced the first movie, like I said, because there's a lot of that where they're going to contact V'ger. It's just a lot of special effects on display. There's a lot of glory shots of the Enterprise coming into the dock. So they
That-
linger on the effects a little bit too much. So it becomes a little more style over substance in the first movie,
yeah.
which is why in the second movie, they kind of get a foothold on it. And they're like, okay, it's going to be a rollicking action adventure set in space. And so instead of more of a space opera.
It is also interesting. Nicholas Meyer takes a specific episode, the Space Seed, which is where Ricardo Montalban had appeared. He was the guy from Fantasy Island after doing Star Trek. And so they didn't really know that this would work, but they thought, well, he was left on this planet. What if everything's devastated and he's bitter and wants revenge? And so that made it very interesting. He made it a random character become the most important villain in the entire series.
And he's fantastic.
And so he kind of does a similar thing where in the third one, something happens with Kirk's son and he dies, which you can tell from this film. And so this is sort of Kirk's, it's the flip where he wants revenge, but he wants to take the higher road and not actually seek revenge. The literal person who kills his son has died, so he doesn't have an embodiment of revenge on. So this is what sets up the Klingons' belief that he is racist towards them.
I mean,
or
it's
bitter
kind of
towards
an
them.
allegory for the whole war, really.
Both,
Right.
Yeah, because like
You know what's great?
if you lived through the Cold War and like you had a son that joined up in the military, and the commies got him, like you're gonna hold a grudge against them. Then oh no, Soviet Union's falling apart. It's like I don't want to make peace with them.
This is a
It's,
thing. I gave you a lot of context just now for the first 5 films, but Jimmy went in just like Jeff, not knowing anything about any of the movies. So seeing that his son had died, not anything Jimmy knew about.
Yeah.
Didn't even know Kirk.
You
had a
don't
son.
really need to see it.
Right. That was
It works in context.
like a lot of things were
Yeah,
lost
well,
on
he's
people that hadn't
clearly
seen it,
older
but it didn't.
movie than
take
he
away
was
from
in
it.
the TV series. So like
Right.
him having a son, probably
Makes
legit
sense.
makes sense. He would have had a
Yeah.
son or something.
What did you think about it? Not knowing anything beforehand.
I mean, I know like it's not like I didn't know anything.
Well, from
like,
the films.
yeah, from the films, but like I like from just like pop culture and like just general nerdology. Like I know things. It's just
Yeah,
like
same like
I
Galaxy
just I
Quest.
just like never had the interest to like pursue Star Trek. Like my jam was like I actually wasn't fully on board Star Wars as a kid. Like that had to grow on me. I had to like finish all 3 films.
This
by the
is
time I
why
was like,
I'm
oh
glad we're
yeah,
talking
Star
about
Wars. But like my thing growing up, like for sci-fi franchises, I mean, for TV shows, it was Farscape.
Which came a little later. But
Yeah, which
still.
came a little later. But like for like when I was like a kid in this era, probably like the best sci-fi content that I saw was on like more like other reruns of television. So like I was watching Lost in Space. Like that was what I was watching.
True.
Lost in Space and what are the 60s sci-fi?
I Dream of Genie's a fantasy.
Yeah.
Forbidden Planet.
Well, it's a fantasy comedy.
Yeah, but it's also
Like,
those
or
are
more a
both from that
comedy
era.
fantasy because it's more a comedy than fantasy.
Yeah. I grew up with Star Trek myself, so I knew this before
Right.
Star Wars. But it's actually funny you bring up. It's hard not to talk about Star Trek compared to Star Wars, but it's funny that the production designer Neil Rodas Jamero worked on Return of the Jedi right before this. So if you look at the makeup for the Klingons or the sets, they kind of look like Jabba's palace when they're in the
Yeah, I can
dungeon,
see that,
the
yeah.
trial room. You know, it's not obvious, but you can say, okay, I can see the guys work in both films. So I actually kind of like that. It makes both worlds appeal to me more. So
It's funny that that comparison goes to it's weird. People hate that episode 3 is kind of set during the Galactic Council, Star Wars. But that's why I think Star Trek works so well is it's more about ethics of space travel.
Yeah.
It would be like to kind of like the diplomacy between galaxies, because that whole tribunal scene when they're talking about how after the Klingon moon Praxis blows up, like they want a peace treaty, and Kirk's contention is, yeah, if that moon hadn't blown up, would they really want a peace treaty? Is this just a guise for them to have us lay down arms so they can attack us while we're vulnerable? And it gets into
get the war out of the way because like
they think they're
Yeah.
losing. So if they're
there's a very intelligent discourse that could be a metaphor for how we deal with other nations now.
Mhm.
Like it's about foreign affairs now. So
Yeah.
it could
I mean,
apply to
also
And
any-
the-
environmental collapse.
I mean, well,
Yeah.
I mean, at the
Big
time, at the time when this movie came out, the real world parallels in history would have been like based like, I mean, really, like you could say Japan during like before the Second World War kicked off for us, because like we cut off their oil supplies because like they were doing shady stuff in like China, but like at some point Japan realized, oh hey, our oil reserves, they're really low. They're only going to last us for maybe another year, but like it's going to be like 6 or 8 months. So they're like, we got to attack the Americans. So like that's
You know,
probably
it's
like Kirk's point of view is a reflection also like, you know, Cold War you know, mentality, but also like from like a historical like he's a military man, like he's in the basically the space navy.
Yeah.
So he's gonna think like, yeah, no, they're running out of resources. Their next best bet in order to keep their empire is to like have a like just gamble it all, like bet it all what they have left and just launch it. And if they take us out, then whatever.
Yeah. It also goes to the point like, what if you decommission the Navy? Are we pointless? If we're sitting on our laurels and they come attack us, what's going to happen? So his mind is like, you can't just put us out. We're going to just lose our grip on everything.
Right.
And so we need to be vigilant still,
And then
at least.
again,
We don't wanna just ignore
ironically,
us.
that again plays back into history because like after the First World War, everybody like demilitarized like heavily. And the next thing you know, oh, we're not prepared. Second World War.
Right.
Second World War ends. All the countries like demilitarized to an extent, and then like the Korean War happens, and like everybody thought like, oh yeah, no, we're this like we live in an age where atomic warfare is a deterrent. Then like right before the Korean War, like Soviet Russia was like, oh, by the way, we have nukes, and they're like, ah, fuck, we don't have the upper hand. So like,
That's why our
like-
military budgets are the biggest
yeah, so like
part of our budgets
yeah,
now because
since like the
we can't
Korean
rest on our laurels.
since the Korean War and the McCarthy era, like that was it. Like, it's just like, oh, but that's a whole other thing.
but that's what's
yeah.
building into their mentality.
Yeah.
It's not a thing
like this-
covering this
yeah.
council.
This movie's very like it's very meta. Like if like you look like today you watch it, you'll be like, oh yeah, no, very political, blah blah blah, blah. Like
it doesn't need to take place
But,
in
like,
the 22nd century. It's
like, if
just
you-
cycling
yeah,
every century.
if you're like a 20, 30 something year old person that grew up with Star Trek and like you were basically the kid or the grandkid of the guys that were in the Second World War, First World War, or like Vietnam recently or Korea, like, and like all this other like stuff, like, so like, you know, this stuff, like the people in your family to like probably talked at length or brought it up. So like
yeah,
the
I mean,
metadata.
my grandfather is maybe 5 years older than Shatner. So, and he was in the Navy.
Yeah.
So during World War II. So that's the age of these people. They're aging out of any possible military outpost or commission or anything.
Yeah, because like a lot of them are like,
So,
we're going to retire.
what are we
going
gonna
to be
do?
out? Like,
Yeah.
what are we going to do?
So I think
Like peace.
this is why I think it's underrated, because it's showcasing what these people probably felt like in 1991.
By the way, did any of the writers, like before they worked on this film, did any of them like work on the one Superman film where they did kind of similar thing, but kind of not as well with like nuclear
But,
weapons?
oh, Superman 4, The Quest for
Yeah.
Peace.
No,
That, like-
someone worked on 3 that I was looking at.
Because like
in our-
I
in
felt
our
a little
group.
like maybe like because Superman didn't do so well, that like maybe a writer was like going to this project,
Well,
like maybe I could
you know
do it
what?
better in this sense.
Superman 4 was basically a story idea that Christopher Reeve came up with in order to come back to the role. So they basically just wanted to satiate him so he would come back because it was a canon movie. Canon bought the rights to the Superman franchise relatively cheap. That's why some of these special effects are reused.
Canon, like the camera company, or no?
No, Canon like Golden
Oh.
Globus. They did like all those Chuck Norris movies in the
Gotcha.
80s.
CANN. Okay.
Yeah, they were like a really low budget.
They
film.
did Schlock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
it was like the new who's that guy that made Jack Nicholson and all those other people.
It's like Roger Corman, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Corman in the 80s.
But I think this is, aside from 2, I think this is Shatner's most emotionally naked and raw performance as Kirk in this. In fact, the my favorite scene is after they have that tribunal and he's talking to Spock about how he shouldn't trust them, he shouldn't believe them, and he should just let them die. You're just like, okay, I could see why this extends beyond politics. He has an emotional stake in this. Again, this isn't a franchise where the characters are stagnant. They've all evolved since those other movies. So then when Spock is in his quarters talking to Kim Cattrall, and she's talking about Vulcan logic, and he says logic isn't everything. We also have to take other factors into account. Whereas in the other movies, he would just be dictated on rationale and logic and pragmatism. Now he's learned that sometimes human emotion extends beyond that. So I like how the characters have evolved.
He's taking in about 70 missions that we've seen in canon that he has evolved from.
Yeah. So wait. So this is the movie where he starts like developing that, like, or
well, no,
like,
I think you see
you see glimmers of it throughout the series.
Because knowing Spock's character and like knowing eventually he does become a little more human, so to speak.
By the time the J.J. Abrams
in this movie, there were moments where like he would react and was like, that's a very human reaction. Like that was definitely like irritation and anger that you just showed. So like,
he knocked the pistol out of her hand.
Yeah.
Honestly, they make it a little more hyperbolic in those J.J. Abrams movies.
Right. Yeah.
It's more gradual in these.
I mean, we regardless, we have to agree that one of the best scenes in the entire franchise is Kirk fighting himself.
Oh my God.
Right.
When he's fighting that Kamaloid.
David Bowie's wife is in this as a shape-shifting alien.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know, it's funny, that alien penal colony where they mine for dilithium reminded me of a lot of the prison in the original Guardians of the Galaxy.
I was thinking that because he bumps into a giant guy. I wonder if that's referencing this film.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's, I think, even more where Jamero's aesthetic comes through, like the Jabba's palace underground.
I love how concurrently while they're in jail trying to figure out a way how to get out, you have the investigation on the starship where they're trying to piece together who sabotaged the ambassador, who killed him, how they got rid of the anti-gravity boots, stuff like that. I like that whole investigative, like almost like a Spock is the Poirot of the
it was Sherlock. He literally quoted Sherlock as an ancestor.
And throughout the movie, Christopher Plummer is constantly quoting Shakespeare. At one point, Bones is just like, I wish he would shut the hell up.
I turned to Jimmy and I'm like, they're squaring off Christopher Plummer and William Shatner. I'm like, they're Canadian Shakespeare trained actors.
Yeah.
They're like the same.
But you
amazing.
I love to think that Christopher Plummer is just like, you're saying that I get to do Shakespeare, but dressed as a Klingon.
Sure.
With an iPad.
Like literal Shakespeare. That's all, because that's all
his quotes.
That's all it does is Shakespeare quotes. And they all fit. So, you know.
Yeah, they do.
One of my favorite things when they're doing the investigation is when Spock keeps being like, remember, did you find out that the communications aren't working, Uhura? Oh, did you notice that you need more? How much time do you need, Scotty, to fix that problem? Scotty's like, I could do it in an hour. It could take at least a day.
Yeah.
They're all just trying to buy time.
Yeah.
He's doing that like I'm managing, but like I'm not managing.
The
like,
union busting, or not union busting, union speak. Good stuff. I also want to point out the fact that he's quoting Sherlock. Nicholas Meyer made his name on Sherlock Holmes.
Time after time.
I had never known any of this. I knew him as the guy that had done Time After Time and these movies for Star Trek, but his first thing was he wrote a book called The 7% Solution that was a new Sherlock Holmes mystery.
They made a movie out of it, yeah.
Instead of him dying on the waterfall with Moriarty, it kind of supersedes that, so he faked his death. Yeah. And it's about like his cocaine habit and Watson bringing him back from the edge and everything. It sounds really interesting. And apparently, like you said, they made a movie. So now I got to see that.
Right.
He got an Oscar nomination for it.
It's funny. Nicholas Meyer just directed a movie that we talked about earlier in the year called Company Business, which was like, must have been a one for them type of deal because it wasn't very good. But he definitely put his heart into this one.
Yeah. Clearly in the same vein. He likes
great set pieces, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I love the set piece where they do kill the Chancellor, played by David Warner, who's been in other Star Trek movies.
And Time After Time.
Right. The the fact that the Klingons have this purple blood that kind of levitates in the ether it's such a cool looking set piece. It's dazzling in a way.
Mm-hmm.
The effects in this are great.
But
Yeah, I mean it's the era.
It looks like Nickelodeon
The
gag,
graphics look like
but
that.
yeah, that's okay.
But the bleeding Pepto Bismol.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, the fact that we get to see these characters, like for me myself, since I'm a big Star Trek fan, having to see them like being promoted, see where they go with their lives. Bones really hasn't done much with his life in this movie, but to get to see Sulu have his own, he has his own ship now, USS Excelsior, because he's been talking about that for a few other movies. He's been talked about having his own ship on his own.
Well, Shatner fucked him over on that, right?
It could also be a mere fact that him and Shatner weren't getting along.
So when the fifth one came around, he was written to have a ship of his own, and Shatner cut that out in the script level.
Right.
And so they had this massive feud this whole time. I don't know if it stems exactly from that, but they never liked each other.
It began on the show.
And, Shatner has an ego, but actors have egos in general, but their egos clashed constantly.
Yeah, but like Shatner's privileged.
Yeah.
But like, especially in that time,
I side with George.
Somebody got locked up for being different as a child.
Yeah.
So
yes,
George Shatner's cool and all, but like, if you're gonna be a pretentious douchebag, like, kind of maybe tone it down when somebody's like,
have the shitty life to back it up.
Yeah.
Shatner was probably very ignorant.
Yeah. Cutting somebody's like potential parts to get a bigger.
I mean,
or to get him out of your hair,
or to get
it doesn't help that
he's on the other ship. But
he's pretty much been enabled throughout show business because he's had 3 huge shows throughout 3 different decades. Because he's had Star Trek, T.J. Hooker, and then he did Boston Legal in the 90s.
And he also has the best Twilight Zone episode.
Right, so he's kind of enabled by show business to think that he's more gifted than he actually is, maybe.
Right. Also, probably like Shakespearean training probably contributes a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Sulu was my favorite when I watched the original series as a kid, though. So I was honestly a little disappointed he's not with the other crew. I wished he had come by and talked with them at all. He's just kind of like on his own with Christian Slater trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's very Christian Slater.
Well, funny thing, like Sulu, like as a kid, it wasn't every time that there's like those shows where there's a whole team of people, like you got one of each person for each race on the team. Like most of the time it didn't register. It was like, oh yeah, they're all different races, kumbaya, yada yada yada. Like I relate to that guy because he's Asian. It's like, no, I don't. Like he's like, he looks a little nerdier than me or something. Like,
this is why those movies.
Sulu and Star Trek, whenever I seeing him, I was like, okay, yeah, no, he seems a little more relatable.
This is why those movies and TV shows, I think, did diversity and representation a little bit better because they didn't underline it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a matter of fact.
Well, I think this would help me appreciate all races because, like I said, Sulu was my favorite, so I didn't think of it until later.
You don't think of him as
the
Asian navigator. You don't think of him as that.
Yeah. And so just having it matter of factly, Uhura is just the important communicator. It isn't a big deal. This is the idyllic future Roddenberry wanted.
Right.
And so I think people take a hard line on certain things. But
going back to the consequences and the repercussions of what happened in the other movies, I like that. And Jeff will appreciate this since he's seen the J.J. Abrams ones, the Kobayashi Maru, where Kirk just completely disobeys all of Starfleet's regulations. It gets brought up in the trial that you've never really adhered to Starfleet regulations, have you? And maybe this could be the reason why his downfall is finally coming, like his comeuppance has finally happened. Yeah. Because he's constantly throughout all the movies going against the grain. So you're just like, this is gonna come to fruition at some point, and it does in this movie.
Yep.
So like I said, even though it's a capstone, the characters have continued to grown and expanded throughout all 6 of the movies, which is probably one of the reasons why the 5th one's not so great because they don't really do much. They don't have much growth.
I have to say though, just on a personal note, Corey, I've never seen you speak so highly of a film before.
Oh, really?
So this is kind of weirded me out a little bit.
I'm sorry. The Dick Tracy episode, I was fully.
Yeah, I'd say Dick Tracy's your favorite of the ones we've covered.
Yeah.
And usually we're trying to find hidden gems.
Yeah, but we weren't talking about character development over several movies with Dick Tracy. Like this is.
Well, that movie
there's
wasn't
a
really bad.
backstory here.
This is the second sequel we've done, but really, like when you get to a sixth movie, it's tough to see if they're gonna have any character development.
Right.
Most of the time, it's horror films.
Yeah, like usually franchises peter out honestly around the fourth movie.
Yeah,
because everything 3 is an intellectually satisfying number. Everybody likes 3's trilogies and stuff like that. So when you extend beyond that,
3 acts.
Yeah, everything.
The film, but then you have 9 overall, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. So when you extend beyond that, it seems extraneous.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I guess you consider this a second trilogy in a way.
Right. It's hard to say because you wouldn't put 1 through 3 as a trilogy. 2 through 4 is the trilogy.
Right.
If you say anything, this would
it's
be
just like
of that trilogy.
Well, like Tristan, you'll get this. Like in Friday the 13th, you got the Tommy Jarvis trilogy.
Right. That's what 2 through 3 or 2 through
That's
4, 6.
That's 4, 5, and 6.
That's right. Okay. And Nightmare on Elm Street kind of has the Dream Masters trilogy.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So even within franchises, there are trilogies.
Mm-hmm.
Weirdly enough.
Yeah. And that's why J.J. Abrams only got 3. They keep wanting to do a 4th because they could continue technically.
Right.
But how? And with a series like this, you could do episodic things like having Khan pop up. But you almost think like, are we starting a new trilogy? No, just do something good and you'll be fine. Like Undiscovered Country.
This is why I always preferred Star Trek over Star Wars. I know, blasphemy, but I don't get me wrong, I like lightsaber duels and everything, but I like a little more
Substance
for thought.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I watch sci-fi, and I feel like these movies and these TV shows definitely got into more of the contemporary topics and subjects.
Yeah, and also
Star Wars is a bubble. It's a vacuum.
Right.
Well, Star Wars is like too much. You're cramming in a lot of elements of epics of stories long past.
Their mythology.
Whereas Star Wars or Star Trek is more like it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for what's going on today, but also not ideal for like tomorrow can be better. Like
Star Wars is
Star Trek's a little more grounded, especially when you consider the more action scenes, especially when it's like spaceship against spaceship.
It's also
at least the original Star Wars trilogy is like we're gonna launch our ships in hyperspace and just throw our fighters at each other.
Yeah, you're alongside an X-wing fighter.
See, this is why Star Wars fans would be bored to death if the Star Trek writers got into the Star Wars universe, because somebody would be having a lightsaber round and they'd be like, yeah, but what are the moral implications of that?
Yeah.
This is something I just realized having watched Star Trek my whole life. The thing about it is when they're like in this film, when their shields are going to be down, they might die. You're imagining everyone on every other level of the ship. You're not seeing the ships come at each other. They don't send fighters at each other to do their dirty work. You're imagining people dying on another level that's gotten hit.
Yeah,
you're imagining Scotty rushing around the engine room trying to fix it.
You're either imagining a movie that's before this time, like a movie that's it's basically a naval battle, a battleship movie, or you're seeing a submarine movie like Das Boot. It's you're in deep space, you're in a void, you're not over space, over water, you're surrounded by the void. So it's basically you're in a submarine movie essentially.
I think the best writers will let you do your own imagination work so that you fill in the gaps, but you don't need to be told what's happening.
The other fascinating thing between Star Trek and Star Wars that I never really thought about was Star Trek originates with, at least, from the storytelling perspective, whereas Star Wars is in a galaxy far, far away. It's this other race of people that we never heard of until this moment. But Star Trek begins with humanity and begins with like Starfleet headquarters is on Earth, and it's about us reaching out to the rest of the universe. And so I feel like that's why it hits home with a lot more people, because it's not just like these fictional people with magic Jedi powers a billion light years
that goes
away.
back to what I was saying, that like, yeah, no, Star Trek is like more grounded, it's more related,
Yeah.
because it's coming from our
Right.
literally like our perspective for like what we want the future to be. Whereas like, again, Star Wars is a fairy tale. It's like its source materials is like, you know, King Arthur and like the like
Joseph Campbell mythologies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know where the Starfleet base is?
San Francisco, isn't it?
It's like almost located exactly where Skywalker Ranch is.
Really?
Or
crazy.
wherever Lucasfilm's main studios are. It's like in the shadow of the Golden Gate Bridge.
That's
Yeah.
fun.
Well, it's funny that ILM did the
Well,
special effects for this.
It's basically where ILM is.
Yeah.
So ILM becomes Starfleet, I guess.
ILM just is Starfleet.
I mean, also
But-
like another like between the two franchises, it's interesting to see how like, you know, like, you know, one's more grounded than the other in like terms of perspective. The other one's like, you know, again, like, you know, fantasy, but it's a sci-fi fantasy. It's just such, like they pretty much have very similar source materials, like in terms of like what makes them sci-fi, both like, you know, the science that was available at the time and like the previous media, like you have 2001 Space Odyssey, you have like Flash Gordon, like you see that in both, which like kind of like looks like, you look at today, like where does that happen? And like a good example like for today is like the movie Pacific Rim that came out like years ago. Like people like asked the director like, so like you're clearly an Evangelion fan, and you sit there and go like, even what? And it was like, your movie is like basically Evangelion. And he was like, what are you talking about? It's like I never watched it. I was like, but and the reason that happened was because his source material is the same as Evangelion. It's like the giant robot anime of the 70s and 80s. And Evangelion came out in the 90s. Like by that time he's a fully grown adult, like probably just getting into the industry. So like he probably didn't have time to like know what that anime
Or look
was.
for other
I
things.
love- On the Pacific Rim note, though, I love that movie because you get exactly what you pay for. It's giant robots fighting giant monsters. I'm like, this is what I want. This is all I wanted. This is perfect.
Like basically like 1970s and 80s giant robot like anime or TV shows.
I'm like, yeah, there's relationships and stuff, but no, it's just giant robots punching giant monsters.
It was like the best.
Chef's kiss.
I was going to
Anyway.
say, we didn't really talk about the newcomers to the series. We mentioned all of them, but I really wanted to point out that I really like Kim Cattrall.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
She's really
Great.
good in the movie, and it's weird because I think it's the third one that Kirstie Alley shows up.
She's playing another Vulcan named Savick.
Yeah, and she's
So
pretty
they're
much
trying to introduce
criticized.
other people. to
She's
help.
pretty much universally criticized and lambasted for that movie.
Yeah, I like her in
It's
it.
weird. You want to play a Vulcan, but you don't want to play it too stiff.
Right, you don't want to
It's
do
a weird
hobby
tightrope
like
you got to
that.
walk. But Kim Cattrall, I think, is great. It's one of her best movie roles. Honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't realize she popped up a bunch in the '80s, like Porky's, and I knew she was in Mannequin.
Big
But
Trouble.
yeah, I didn't know any of the other ones. So,
I saw the opening credits and I'm like, oh, Kim Cattrall and Kurtwood Smith? What is this?
oh, true.
Kurtwood
yeah,
Smith
right.
looks hilarious.
Yeah,
Kurtwood Smith looks like a Keebler elf.
he thought
Yes.
he was another Klingon because it was just big hair and he kind of had ridges. That was the thing.
Yeah,
they
his,
always-
like his hair, like he just like he didn't look.
they always used to make fun of the fact that like, oh, you have one ridge on your forehead, must be a Klingon.
I mean, like it was probably like one ridge, and then like also like the way that they had his hair set up, like whatever, like he was bald at that point, so like
Oh,
they
yeah.
probably had to like
I think he's
plaster
always
on
been
like
Klingon,
a
Bald
mat,
was
no,
born.
like a bald
It was
cap
like a
and
top
then the wig,
knot a little bit.
but like it looked like a bad mullet.
Yeah.
He had a receding hairline and a bad mullet,
It's
and like
the one
I guess
bad
it
look
looked
of
like
this
kind
film.
like with the crease on his forehead and the way that the bald cap was put on, like
Looked like Dustin Hoffman
hair
from
fit,
Kung Fu Panda.
even though he's already, but like whatever, he looked like a Klingon. I was like, they were like, Mr. President, like President of the Klingons. I thought like, what's
Yeah,
going-
we
like,
got
I
confused
thought
at
they
first.
I thought they were an empire. Do empires have presidents?
It's weird when
A
you say
Klingon for
Klingon.
president?
I also knew because Spock's father Sarek was with him, so I'm like, I think this is just the council. But why would they put a Klingon on the council if they don't?
That's the other thing. I wasn't sure if people would even pick up that that was Spock's father because they don't say it explicitly. I knew that because of the casting, but
right. Yeah, I saw Mark Lenard. And I'm like, hey, but who does that for Mark Lenard other than nerds? So,
yeah, it was weird that part where Kurtwood Smith said Klingon bitches leave. That was
weird.
I just one other quick note that I was thinking about was that
I thought Iman was good.
Going back to
very good, yeah.
Going back to the title of this podcast, obviously this is where you got it from.
That's what
it is. The Undiscovered because watching this movie, find out the undiscovered country is the future. It's the metaphor for the future. Whereas the undiscovered decade, it's the past. Because we're just going back.
I threw out a couple of names from movies that were all throughout the 90s, and this was the only one we all kind of liked. So that's why it stuck. But it really ends up applying because at the time we didn't realize we were going to be doing hidden gems from the past that have kind of gone by the wayside.
Oh, this is a hidden gem. Well,
it definitely is within the franchise. People don't talk about this one much.
Yeah, and that's why even something like what did we do a couple months ago? I was thinking about Back to the Future 3. Mm-hmm. While it's beloved anyway, because it's part of the trilogy, it is the least beloved of the three. So even before we realized we were doing hidden gems, we were doing hidden gems.
But he did an anniversary for the third one. They did for the second one.
Right.
Yeah. You know, just real quick, we've seen a lot of movies from the past about the future.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, we're gonna mess our brains up thinking about this stuff. We're gonna just bring ourselves into a loop, and we're just gonna be like, what is time? Because
oh God, where's he going with this?
I don't know. He's getting very existential.
I'm short circuiting right now.
Guys, right now, if I phase out, I might be no. Getting a little. Oh man,
I don't know. Like how they got Iman.
Oh, now you're phasing out.
Oh yeah, I'm phasing out. See?
Oh no, Jimmy.
We got the wrong bat. We got to switch backgrounds.
It was perfect. It was perfect casting to get Iman to play the chameleonic shapeshifter alien because her husband is David Bowie in real life, and he's kind of androgynous, so he could kind of straddle.
He's a shapeshifter.
He's a shapeshifter in a way.
Mm-hmm. He's a shapeshifter in Venture
That is true. Yeah, so it's funny. He's basically doing Iman in Venture Brothers.
They both played aliens because he was an alien in The Man Who Fell to Earth.
That's true. Yeah,
great movie.
Yeah, well, Christopher Plummer, of course, is the other big name from this. So we already discussed
Christy Plummer.
It's weird.
How well he stands against Shatner.
Yeah, I didn't recognize
he's clearly a villain from the beginning.
Yeah, he just looked like a white dude, like doing an Asian stereotype. I looked at him and was like, he looked
like John Wayne from the.
He looked like a Mongolian.
I did think it was a little cringy that his makeup wasn't fully Klingon. He said he didn't want to have the full effect that David Warner put himself through.
Right.
So,
but the little side stash, the way that the Klingon outfit looks, and he's a little squinty, and the top knot, it's how do you not look like somebody from a 1950s movie portraying Genghis Khan, but he's white, John Wayne. He did
look just like that.
Yeah, they do look kind of Ronin-esque.
Yeah, well, John Wayne and the Mongol, what was the name of was the movie Genghis Khan?
It was called The Conqueror.
Yeah, it was
The Conqueror.
The Conqueror, yeah. You look I just got those super vibes off of him. So when I was oh, that's Christy Plummer.
Wasn't as bad as Mickey.
I was distracted. I'm
you gotta look past it.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of did. I was it was the 90s. What do you expect?
I really like that it looks like Jimmy's trying to gasp for air through the
instead of trying to talk and stay in this reality at the same time.
I'm gonna save you, buddy.
Yeah, no,
fading out the wrong part.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is such a good place to end the franchise with the original crew. I wish some of them hadn't come back for Generations. We'll talk about that at a later date.
Yeah.
I think that movie disgrace.
I liked Generations at the time. I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters.
I've rewatched it recently. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It is terrible.
It's really mainly Shatner that comes back too.
They come back at the beginning. Doohan comes back.
It's Scotty and Chekhov are in the beginning. and then he disappears. I don't think it mars them. And
but talk about people would complain about fan service now.
yeah,
that movie's all fan service.
It was a little off. It's also the second Star Trek movie I saw, because I'd only seen Voyage Home as a kid, and then we went to see that for Christmas.
I'm sorry.
Our Christmas film. So yeah, well, a better Christmas film came 2 years later with First Contact.
Yes,
that's the year of the Next Generation films.
Probably the pinnacle of the Next Generation movies, I would say.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else really to talk about with Star Trek. I really like it. I was very surprised because I knew nothing about it somehow, even though my parents told me everything about the series. They didn't spoil this one. So I really liked David Warner. I really like Christopher Plummer. I'd give this an A+, honestly. It's one of the ones I would go back to for Star Trek movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would probably give this A-. My favorite of the franchise are probably 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
I like 3 a lot. But yeah, this one it tackles and addresses certain issues like bigotry and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it does it with
It tackles those issues while also being racist, Christopher Plummer.
Okay.
But they also had this infamously happened. Uhura was given the line, "Guess who's coming to dinner?" and she's like, "Fuck no." I ain't saying.
Who said that?
It was
Chekhov.
Which is also kind of ironic because he's Russian. So if you do just the Russian metaphor rather than the African American metaphor, it's a little cringy. The Russian metaphor is fine.
But as a way to send off this crew, I think I don't think they could have asked for a better send off.
Yeah.
What did you guys think?
I agree. Yeah, I definitely A+. Like it's changed my perspective on the whole franchise, at least pre-Abrams. You know.
I mean,
what more could you ask for?
Yeah.
I'll give it a B+.
Whoa.
Mostly because like this is what night.
Racism.
Well, no, not the racism. Like there's enough allegories to counter that. I'm just gonna chalk that up to a stylistic error that was not like wasn't taken in consideration in correcting. So like
Yeah.
whatever. But like I'd give it like the big like I wouldn't give it an A simply because like this is the 90s and like this is a big sci-fi thing and like for a science fiction movie like the writing and the concept behind it like it's good but like you're watching a sci-fi movie, you expect a little bit more, like a little more sci-fi. It was kind of just like it's Star Trek, so it's like it's that level
more
of like,
character based.
Like
you know what?
I mean, you definitely need to have
I'll give
seen.
Generations this. The Generations gets more into a little more of the science fiction concepts, like the Nexus universe, alternate dimensions.
I mean, there's that, but like there's just like
Moby Dick.
I feel like you would have need to have seen.
Like I think Tristan, like it's a trial movie with a sci-fi setting, and like that's okay, that's fine, but like that works perfectly if it was like part of a series.
Yeah, there was an episode.
That's
But
actually
if it was a standalone movie that just came out today, or even back then, it was just a random sci-fi movie with like characters we're not even attached to. Like,
yeah, it might not have worked.
Conceptually, like for this series, that's great. But like as a movie, like by itself, like it's like So like so that's why I'm giving it a B+.
That's why I like it, because I think it works right at this time for them. But that might be because I'm a Star Trek fan and I discovered something I didn't realize I would like this much. I think that's why.
It's a human story with aliens.
Right. And honestly,
I do agree that you need to have, like, a lot of it is lost on you if you haven't seen the previous films.
Right.
But it's a good story on its own, but a lot like with the thing about Kirk's son and with all of the character development that Corey spoke of, like we missed out on that because we jumped in on episode 6.
Right. Yeah, but like we grew up with the back knowledge of it. Like I feel like the only way, if you're gonna if you were to start your own sci-fi separate universe and have this talk about bigotry and mistrust and war, They did it best in like the Dennis Quaid movie where he gets stranded on a planet with an enemy.
Hidden
Enemy Mine.
Enemy Mine.
Yeah,
Mine.
Enemy Mine. That movie, like that did a superb job at because how do you
I've heard
do
say that.
that years of warfare and in order to survive you got to work together and overcome this bigotry, but the build up of trust that it takes to get through that that's intense.
That's
And
half
like
the
that-
movie, though.
Yeah, that movie was just very sci-fi-y. Because you're not in a going from one spaceship to the other, and you're just basically going from one scene room to the next scene room. That's what it feels like with Star Trek. It's
Sure.
just the backdrop is science fiction, but it's not really important to the story. Really, it's just it's important for the characters in this in this universe. So it's sci-fi doesn't even have to be front and center.
Yeah,
It's just it's in the background and that's it.
that is true, because science fiction usually has something that is happening to them. This is just a normal story set in a science fiction universe.
Whereas
in the past, we've seen science applied to the fiction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I always think about, Jurassic Park is a sci-fi film because they're taking DNA and making dinosaurs.
Yeah,
so
they even
that's why it works so well, because
It's a
sci-fi-
monster movie, though, if you condense it down. Right.
Yeah, if you're picking apart certain things, this is just a
and
setting.
you could even say Jurassic Park's they're just going sideways a little bit. You could even say Jurassic Park technically sci-fi horror,
right.
because it's the horrifying concept is
What would happen?
You think you have control of science and nature, but really it's the other way around. No matter what, Dr. Ian Malcolm's right. Nature will find a way.
Right.
This is why I think you'll probably like Generations a bit more than I did, because it goes a little more into science fiction dynamics and quantum physics and stuff like that. You'll probably be more interested in stuff like that.
Yeah, you might actually. Like
I would.
Plus Malcolm McDowell. If nothing else, I like
no.
him.
Malcolm McDowell. Yeah, no.
He's the villain. Yeah.
You weren't on that prime sci-fi jam unless especially if you have have a series that you're pumping out, even if it's a B movie, if Malcolm McDowell's in it, he'll make it worth it for sure.
Time after time.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Right.
David Warner and Malcolm McDowell are in back-to-back Star Trek films.
he's one again one of those guys, even if it's a B movie, he will make it. He'll make it worth it. It's very rare that he doesn't save the movie.
Yeah.
Because he makes a good villain.
You will see.
Try.
I mean, he tries. But when I say saves a movie, he gives it just enough credibility to make the rest of the movie tolerable. But you like the bits that he's in.
Oh, Rob Zombie's
That's
Halloween.
how I feel.
Like Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Yeah, he's the only part I like about that movie.
Yikes.
Yeah, because you could enjoy him, but the movie is made enjoyable because of him.
Yeah.